Okay, let's take a look at similarity and measurement. Now we saw in the last lesson that when two figures are similar, they're the same shape, but they're different sizes. We're going to use that information to find unknown side lengths. So in this first example, ABCD is similar to EFGH. They want us to find EH, so that's why it's marked with an X. And they have a few other measurements filled in, not all of them, but a few. Alright, what we're going to do first is we want to find EH, so let's just mark that. We want to find X. And I'm going to make a ratio with whatever our missing side is to its corresponding side. So EH would correspond to AD. I look at AD, and that's 16 inches. Okay, now the ratio we saw yesterday, or in the last lesson, that the property about similarity tells us that any pair of corresponding sides is going to have the same ratio. So I could pick these corresponding sides, whatever I choose, the ratio is going to be the same. So I can use that information and say, alright, first I said X and that corresponds to 16, so I made a ratio. But now what I can do is write another ratio. How about this one? 30, starting with my original figure, this is the one I started with, so I'm going to go 30. And then the side corresponding to 30. 30 corresponds to 12. Alright, these are both ratios from the figures. I did X to 16, and then the second one was 30 to 12. Notice if I started with this figure, and the second ratio I had to start with this figure. But what I can do here is, because the ratios in our property yesterday said that they're the same, I can set them equal, and now I really have a proportion. I started to label that inches because everything's in inches. I don't need to worry about that. So if you just want to ignore units while you write these proportions, that's fine. Makes it a little less cumbersome. Alright, let's cross multiply. We can start solving. 30 times 16 is 480. 12 times x is 12x. Now I'm going to get x by itself. These are being multiplied, so I'm going to divide by 12. When I divide 480 by 12, 48 divided by 12 is 4, and I have that extra 0. So my answer is x equals 40, and because we're talking about units, again, I have to label it inches. So the last thing I'm going to recommend you do is go back through and plug that in. 40 inches. Does it make sense for this side EH to be 40 inches, knowing that this is 30? Yeah, it does, because this was 12, that's 16. So it's very proportional just looking at it without any math. So that's a very reasonable answer, and we did all our work right, so we know that it's correct. Let's try another one. Given STU is similar to DEF. Okay, I'm going to start with what I'm trying to find, which is DF. Mark my X. Now I'm going to find the side corresponding to that, which is going to be SU, and it's 35. Now, since I started with it, if it helps you, maybe label your triangles. I started with this triangle, and then I went to the second triangle. And then I'm going to go back to the first triangle, and then I'm going to find a side that is labeled there. So in this case, we see that 36 is marked, so I'm going to mark that 36. And the corresponding side to 36 is this one, which is 45. And I can get all that information not just by looking at it, because you don't always just want to trust your visual. You want to go off of this up here, because that's going to really tell you what sides correspond. But when I get this here, x over 35 equals 36. I wonder if the screen goes down in the viewing too. Sorry about that. X over 35 equals 36 over 45. I could do my cross multiplying. When I cross multiply this way, I get 1,260. When I cross multiply this way, I get 45x. Divide by 45 to get x by itself. And I find that my answer is 28. And I want to check, does that make sense? Again, we're talking about units, so we want to label it millimeters. Does it make sense for my answer to be 28? And yes, it does. If I write it in here, 28 is very reasonable considering that's 36. Alright, let's try number 2, and it's a similar concept, only we have quadrilaterals, which is the same concept. So we're trying to find PQ, which is this missing side. So I'm going to start with the missing side and find what corresponds to it. PQ corresponds to JK, and JK is 36. I started here, I went to here. Okay, now I need to find another side on this first figure, and they give us that SP is 35. So the side corresponding to SP is MJ, and MJ is 21. So now I have that ratio. Because they're both corresponding parts, I set them equal and solve the proportion. I'm going to get 36 times 35, again, is 1,260. And on this one, 21 times x is 21x. Divide both sides by 21, divide both sides by 21. X is cancel, or 21's cancel, x comes down, and I find that my answer is 60, and I want to label it inches. Okay, again, check, does that make sense if that's 60 inches? It does, it's very reasonable, so we did an awesome job. Alright, let's go to the next page. Here we're going to look at a word problem, and in this word problem, we're going to talk about cactus. It says a man who is 6 feet tall is standing near a saguaro cactus. The length of the man's shadow is 2 feet. So here's our man, and he's 6 feet tall. He has a shadow that's 2 feet tall. Okay, now the cactus casts a shadow 5 feet long. So there's this cactus over here, and it's casting a shadow 5 feet long. They haven't told us yet how tall it is, though. The cactus and the man are perpendicular to the ground, so they're standing straight. There is not any angles. The sun's rays strike the cactus and the man at the same angle. Okay, and they form two similar triangles. So we can make these actual triangles. They want to know how tall is the cactus. Well, that's why they didn't give it to us. So now we have a triangle x, base is 5, another triangle 6, base is 2. I'm going to do my information of similar triangles. So I'm going to say x over 6, because those are corresponding parts. I started with the cactus triangle, so I have to come back to the cactus triangle. I'm going to say 5 over 2. Set them equal. Do some cross multiplying. 2x equals 30. Divide by 2 on both sides so that my 2's cancel. X equals 15. So x is 15 feet. Does that make sense? Well, if this is 2, that's 3 times as much. That's 3 times as much. Now, in a problem like this, you could have probably done a lot of that mentally, but I'm going to want to see, especially on a test, I'm going to want to see that you can do this work. Maybe you don't have to draw the picture necessarily, but I will want the triangles, and I want to see the proportion. Okay? All right, we're going to skip this one. If you would like to see it done later, I'd be happy to do it. But I want to move on to the very bottom one just for extra practice. I'll tell you, though, that... Oh, no, we'll come back. I thought I had answered that one, but I have a different answer. So we'll look at just example 3. All right, given triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEC. Find BE, this piece right here. So what I'm first going to do, these are actually 2 overlap triangles. I'm going to draw them out so they're both on their own, okay? They're not overlapped anymore. So the first triangle I'm drawing is this DEC that it says right here. So it's DEC, and my measurements are 15 and 36. Now I'm going to draw the big one, and that's this whole thing, ABC, so I can label it ABC. And my measurements here, well, along the side it's 20, and along the base it's x and 36. So I'm going to add those, x plus 36. So now that I have this drawn, I can pretty much ignore the big picture and just work out these 2 triangles. Alright, I'm trying to find x basically, so sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead, start with this, x plus 36. And I'm going to write it over the corresponding side, 36. And then I'm going to write the other ratio. I started with the big one, so I'm going to come back to the big one. This is 20 over 15. So I did x plus 36 over 36, 20 over 15. Corresponding parts is what I've done. Again, there's other ways of writing your proportions, but this is one that will definitely get you the right answer. So this corresponding side ratio and this corresponding side ratio. This is actually in parentheses. So I'm going to cross multiply. I get 15 times x plus 36. And over here, I'm going to get 720. Now I have to distribute this 15 in. I get 15x plus 36 times 15 is 540. And from here, we should be good to go solving out our problem.